Rich and you famous. On EpiPens, on the private, a playlist. I like a glitch. Maybe you are brainless. Maybe you on a playlist. Doesn't matter, we won't make it quick in a painless. Rich and you famous. On EpiPens, on the private, a playlist. I like a glitch. Maybe you are brainless.
All right, U.S. flies long-range bomber in drill with South Korea, Japan reaction to the North's missile test. Now, the missile test, of course, was proving that they could actually reach even as far as California. Of course, Seoul, South Korea, the United States flew a long-range bomber in a trilateral drill with South Korea and Japan on Sunday in response to North Korea's recent test firing of a new intercontinental ballistic missile designed to strike the U.S. mainland. South Korea's military said North Korea on Thursday tested the newly developed Hwasong-19 ICBM, which flew higher and stayed in the air longer than any other missile it had fired. North Korean leader Kim Jong-un called it an appropriate military action to cope with the external security threats posed by its rivals. On Sunday, the U.S. flew a B-1B bomber to train with South Korean and Japanese fighter jets near the Korean Peninsula, demonstrating the three countries' firm resolve and readiness to, of course, North Korea's advancing nuclear and missile programs. South Korea's Joint Chiefs of Staff in a statement said, of course, the trilateral aerial training was the second by South Korea and U.S. and Japan this year. Now, that trilateral alliance, or the Asian NATO, has been advancing, and they've been doing more and more together. This is something that I have pointed out. It is not just them. Of course, there's the regular NATO. All of the world's countries are picking a side, and it is quite wild to see where people have landed compared to in World War II. Of course, with Germany and Japan now our friends. Of course, the U.S. often responds to major North Korean missile tests with temporary deployments of some of its most powerful military assets as long-range bombers, aircraft carriers, and nuclear-powered submarines to and near the Korean Peninsula. North Korea typically responds angrily to such U.S. actions, calling them a part of a U.S.-led plot to invade the North and performing additional weapon tests. So what's funny is every time we show our resolve and we kind of clap back, they basically do more. And then when we respond to that and say, hey, you can't do that, they do it even more. What's funny is it's like they know the military might we have. So when they say that, we're doing this to show our might and to show our resolve, I'm pretty sure they all know, especially North Korea. If it was Russia or China, I would get that a little bit more. But as far as North Korea has nothing on us. But now North Korea is currently supposedly serving in Ukraine with Russia, which means Russia owes them a favor. Not to mention they're working with Iran and they're working with China right now. So they're not alone. And I think that confidence is going to buy us right into World War III. We're going to talk about it tonight, along with all of the other stuff, of course, less than 24 hours away from Pick the Prez Day. We'll be right back right after this. Nothing in the show should be considered legal, medical, or financial advice. The views of the callers can differ considerably and do not necessarily reflect my opinion, Dex's opinion, or anyone else who works with the show. You should always do your own research and consult with professionals. The internet is full of fake news, so please take everything with a grain of salt. If you have not already, it helps us out if you end up going through any of our affiliates, and it helps you out if you end up protecting yourself against cybercrime. NordVPN is one of the best and one of the easiest to use. If you do not have a virtual private network, it protects your IP address, which is your online identity, which actually connects to your real address and everything else. It also connects to you. If you know anything about how they are data logging and basically getting your profiles down, you can prevent that by having a VPN. Nord is, again, one of the easiest. Download it. It's like an on switch and off switch. All you have to do. Go to marfooglenews.com/VPN. Not only will you get a giant discount on this, but you will also be helping us. I appreciate your support, and I appreciate everyone that goes through any of our affiliates. Can't say thank you enough.
Depends on the private, a playlist. I like a glitch. Maybe you are brainless. Maybe you on a playlist. Doesn't matter, we won't make it quick in a painless. You're rich and you're famous. On EpiPens on the private, a playlist. I like a glitch. Maybe you are brainless. Maybe you on a playlist. Doesn't matter, we won't make it quick in a painless.
All right, what is going on, guys? What is up, Foogle fam? Let's go over to the chat. Let's do a quick roll call. Hey, thank you, John Baldwin, Stephen McMahon. We've got, of course, Tyjas NZ, John Davies. Nice to see you. Of course, we have Saren. Thank you. I appreciate you. Just subscribe this week. Carlton Sutton, Sweet Jenna, Rainbows, Boop, Marf. That is funny. I was just saying, I don't know why Boop in particular, but somebody was talking to me about the new Call of Duty and how all of the emotes have boop, boop, boop. What a weird word. Tony Hamby, what is going on? Mark Schaefer. Let's see here. Lisa Ispel, Spectre, One Like Us, Kenneth Brisner, Rip Curl Readiness. Hey, nice to see you. I just commented, I don't even think you were here that day, but how you've been here like the last month. So thank you so much. Judy Bailey, Fish85, Bradley Smith, Vaughn Brock. Obviously, we're getting closer to the craziness, closer to the Pick the Prez. Tomorrow, we're going to see, obviously, a ton of people come out. We had all of these kind of threats come out from DHS, FBI. Will it live up to the hype? Now, of course, as a channel that talks about prep and looks at news from a prepping standpoint, just want to remind you, hopefully we have a peaceful tomorrow. But even our president, who said, I believe it will be fair, but I don't know about peaceful. And, of course, the DoD directive, is this all part of the thing to make it all hyped up for tomorrow for us to expect something? I don't know. But what I do know is that it's going to be a high-risk day tomorrow as far as if something goes down. As far as preppers go, we're going to prepare for an event, even if we don't know if it's actually going to happen or not. I think between tomorrow and January, depending on what the results are tomorrow, and I highly doubt that if the former prez steps back in, that it's going to be very friendly. And I believe that if he loses, I don't believe it's going to be very friendly. So either way, we know that that's there. So that's almost a guaranteed crazy situation. Unless by, craziness, say the former president loses and it's supposedly a landslide, a loss, and he just concedes and then it goes away. That would be wild. Or if, of course, the other side loses and they just totally concede. I think that will be just as weird as anything else, is if everything goes back to peaceful in the next couple months for whatever reason. I think that would be just as weird as what is happening right now. But many of us believe that this is the time. This is where it's all going to kick off. And the reason is the framework. You see North Korea, South Korea, of course, right now getting absolutely fired up. North Korea building trenches behind the lines they just severed between the two countries. So it's getting absolutely wild. Let's bring in my co/internet brother, Dex James. What is going on and how are you doing today?
Hello, Adam, and hello, Foogle fam. I'm doing just fine. Even if they give up on the other side and try to make it peaceful, I think if he wins, the former wins, we're still going to be in trouble. Because if you look at what happened during his 4 years, they did everything they possibly could do to make chaos around the country. And I have a sneaking suspicion we'll see that again.
Well, and then another thing, imagine he wins. And oddly enough, this would be strange. They say, nope, it was fair. And you know what? You fair and square, you won. We're cool with that. Within a month or two or within 6 months, another event like what happened at one of his events, pop, and then down and out. What do you think is going to happen then? Sort of like what happened in the 60s, right?
We lose no matter what happens at this point. We're in a position right now where I kind of feel like we're in a lose-lose. And, of course, I think everybody wants their outcome, and I'd like to think that the outcome that they want will be successful. But I don't have a lot of faith that we're all going to be in the land of lollipops and unicorns next month or next year, for that matter. I think it's going to be a very difficult road ahead, no matter what happens tomorrow.
Yeah, we're time and time again, we have seen everything that kind of looks like it's about to happen. It happens, but it happens in just such an odd way that it's predictable but unpredictable at the same time. Speaking of which, Dex, let's go over the Philippine military drills to seize an island in the South China Sea. As far as island hopping, we've called this for years, since the first order. Back in 2018, I covered a story where the U.S. was ordering all of these island hopping, or what were those? Those transport vehicles, kind of like in D-Day, the amphibious vehicles. They ordered just tons of them. And you looked at that, you could see that back then and think, okay, that was the beginning of when they started building the Spratly Islands. You could tell what kind of war the war was going to look like. Now you fast forward and you see them, of course, now have multiple Spratly Islands, full-on bases, full-on airfields on islands that are made out of nothing. Meanwhile, the U.S., in just the last year, in fact, in the last 14 months, they have taken World War II, straight up from I Am Legend, jungled up airfields that were completely covered. Look, something from like a Crash movie where they crash land on an island that used to be uninhabited. They have taken it, and it looks from that scene to now clean and up and running base. The U.S. has straight up cleaned off all the airways on all of these World War II, relic airfields, and that is because they're about to use them again. We are going to look at a war that involves island hopping. Now Filipinos are doing these very specialized drills. I have a feeling, Dex, that is because they're going to be working with the U.S. on these missions.
Yeah, the Philippine military opened 2 weeks of combat drills Monday that included seizing an island in the disputed South China Sea, and that is probably going to be an issue with China for sure. More than 3,000 Filipino Army, Navy, and Air Force personnel will take part in the maneuvers, in which the Philippine military officials said were not directed against any country, as they are just drills. But they're going to be, claiming an island, or they're going to be practicing taking an island in the South China Sea. And of course, all of those islands tend to be contested. So this won't go unnoticed, I'm sure, by China.
Nope, and I can almost guarantee you I don't know if we'll have time to cover that, but I guarantee you in the next 24 hours or by, 4 in the morning, China will make some sort of statement and say these are reckless moves and these kind of drills are threatening our sovereign state and they are absolutely unacceptable, and the Filipinos are playing a game of, toss the ring on the fiery bowl or something. I guess that's more North Korea style, but you guys get what I'm saying. They're going to say something just like that. And it's going to be within the next 24 hours. There's always a response, and it always says, you can't do that. You shouldn't do that because we're doing everything right. And then, of course, Russia is plotting to... This is a huge claim. And, of course, there's so much big stuff going on right now. This might actually kind of fly right over most people's heads. There is so much happening tomorrow that this claim is probably going to just go right over people's heads. I mean, if you look at most of the top trending stuff on X of what people are talking about right now, this is very low on the totem pole. But
was that pun intended?
Yeah, that. I didn't know that was pun not intended. But again, Russia could be plotting to plant bombs on passenger and cargo jets heading to the U.S., security officials in Europe say. Incendiary devices being shipped across Europe could be a test for a covert Russian operation to start fires on planes flying to the States. What? And by the way, you know one thing I thought of, Dex, and this is something I just thought of right before the show, is I don't know if we can try to find that article, but cargo planes, the U.S. military made a very specialized weapon that could be dropped out of the back of cargo planes, and it was a very specialized missile that could drop out and then take off from midair and then launch towards something, meaning that you would not need a jet or a Hercules or something like that to shoot a weapon, or a F-22. You could actually have a very large missile or a very large explosive go out the back of any cargo plane. That means if they use eminent domain, they say, hey, or, we're taking your planes. They could take DHL. They could take FedEx. They could take any big cargo plane and turn it into a weapon. And that is something you would need as well if you are also fighting a force that is bigger in numbers. Dex, did you and remember they started landing cargo jets on runways or on highways? So I just thought of that. That makes me wonder.
The thing that comes to my mind is do you really need to say, or do we really need to think that it's Russia doing this, or is this a setup psychologically for us to prepare us for when this happens, and they can point the finger at Russia, and it could actually have been some form of orchestration? I think that is one of the things that I fear the most about this. They've had two different instances of they claim to have found these incendiary devices on planes in Europe. I think Poland and Germany, or no, Britain and Germany. Poland is the one claiming it's Russia. But we don't really, there's not any definitive knowledge of that outside of what those intelligence groups are telling us. And we know how intelligence groups operate and who they all work with and who they all, work together with, coming right back here to our 3-letter agency.
And of course, we did a previous show about this, and I believe it was on news. Let's see here. I believe that was on news. So if you go to news channel, and we can probably attach this here, there is a video on our live section. You always have to click on live, which is kind of lame. But if you go there, you will see there is a show. Or you can actually, what's much easier is going to marfooglenews.com. And then you can actually go back and look for it right here. Yeah, right here. This is the show. If you click on this, something fishy just went down. And when was this? This was October 15th. So this is 20 days ago. And a lot of people forget about this. This was the one that they found. I believe this was the Poland one. So they were saying that Russia was doing this and that this was possibly a Russia operation. Why would they put that out into the public? That's one of the questions I have. And then now, one day before our Pick the Prez Day, they're saying this and nobody's paying attention to it. I think that's pretty nuts. Again, the claim is that Vlad is plotting on putting boom booms on cargo jets and planes heading into the United States. That's a really, really big claim, to say the least. So put your heads on a swivel. Obviously, when we think of one of the worst disasters, we think of, 2001, right? And most of you are probably here because you had a lot of questions about that event in the first place. So as Dex said, there's a lot of worries about claims like this, but yet I believe most won't cover it until way later, and then you'll all of a sudden see all of the internet sleuths, all of the TikTok channels that all of a sudden go, isn't this weird? Look at this and this and this happened. What's funny is they always do it way later. Have you noticed that? TikTok or the people that do the weird stories that we cover here, they're always doing it like 3 weeks, a month, 6 months later, and they're like, did you know? And people are just blown away by it over on TikTok. If they were here, they would know it the night that it happens, because our community is able to sniff this stuff out immediately. They say two heads are better than one. Well, if you got 2,000 or 3,000 together, you most definitely can smell out the BS pretty quickly. All right, and then before we move on, make sure to go check out EMP Shield. Again, this is one of the affiliates that I believe will be most important for not only any kind of EMP strike, but for an inevitable event. As far as a CME, this can also protect you against a solar event, a Carrington-level event from the sun. They, of course, say that this is that we're possibly overdue for, will happen. It's not a matter of if it will happen, it is a when. This device not only protects you against that, protects your cars, trucks, motorcycles, boats, generators in your home, but it can also protect you against the electromagnetic pulse attacks from any of our adversaries. It will ground the signal before it can fry your device in less than 500 trillionths of a second. That way you can drive home to your family or get out to bug out. Like with any of our affiliates, we believe in, and we, of course, back them 1,000%. We've been with the same ones, some of them for 4 or 5 years, because I believe that this will end up saving a life or keeping somebody alive or getting somebody home to their family. Any of our other affiliates will either get you through a disaster, feed you through a disaster, make you more comfortable through it, or again, just straight up have you be able to heal from something. So if you haven't noticed, at this point, we are very, very close to that day, the day that everybody's been talking about. I sure hope that by tomorrow, everything is peaceful. But if it is not, for those of you that have been watching over the last couple of years who have prepped, I hope you guys realize that, you're set up for any disaster. It doesn't have to be the end of the world. But at this point, I think that our community is one of the best prepared you could have out there. And by our community, I mean all of us, my peers, everybody else that has been seeing this stuff since 2001. There's a lot of changes that are happening, and I think that in the eyes of the people above us, I think some of them actually believe that they're heroes, that they believe they're doing what's right for the earth and for human civilization. And for that, I think a lot of them think that there takes a huge sacrifice. But I don't think if you're the sacrifice, you see it the same way. So again, I hope that people end up getting themselves protected, not only against this, but having extra food, water, having yourself prepared for a power outage, for anything that may come our way. Dex, go ahead.
Well, yeah, and not just, I know we've talked a little bit about what could start tomorrow as the notion of civil and people being upset on either side, but we got to remember about, and I think you mentioned this briefly, the potential of our adversaries using tomorrow against us, especially those from the Middle East, which have ties through Venezuela into the border. So, and we've seen, even they've given us one example. They made sure to put that out in the press and make sure everybody was well aware of that K group in Oklahoma, right? Who was specifically going to do something tomorrow. So, I don't think we should be fearful and let that keep us from doing our duty, our civic duty. But at the same time, you need to be aware. You need to pay attention. You need to be cautious.
And keep in mind that the way that's set up, they've pointed the finger there. They've already set up so if something does happen, where are people going to look? The first place they are going to look is towards Iran. Or they're going to look towards Russia if it's something plane related. But again, make sure you realize at the point where you're the one affected, I don't think you're going to care who did it. You're just going to care that you survive through it or that you get through it. They also talked about non-nuclear EMP devices, specifically DHS and FBI have talked about these devices that can be made from parts that are available on the internet. They say the internet. I believe most of the parts are darknet, so you'd have to be somebody who is really serious or is getting instruction on it. But these devices can knock out up to a 5-mile radius. So in the middle of downtown Seattle, you would knock out, pretty much the entire city, or at least the downtown area. You could knock out huge swaths of land. If you coordinated with others and did the same thing, you could knock out the whole country, or at least the major cities. What kind of damage would that do? It would do a lot. And there's only so many locations, only 9 of the major transformers, the units, 9 of them out of, I forget what the final huge number was, if it's in the thousands or if it's in the hundreds, but only 9 of the locations, if they take down those transformers, it would take down the entire grid. The thing is nobody knows which 9, right? But it is called a grid for that reason. Texas may be safe in that case, but if you've talked to any Texans lately, they've had a lot of weird stuff going on. So who knows? Maybe it would be a coordinated thing. Hopefully that does not happen, but that's why preppers look at the potential, and if that scale goes up, we prep for it. And then the IRGC commander, Revolutionary Guard from Iran, confirms new operation against Israel. Day before we picked the prez, they're confirming. And one thing I think of is how many times they've come out with a public statement And, Israel just did this. They said, oh, well, we're actually going to delay and we're not going to do this strike. And then they did the strike. Was it, kind of a misdirection? Like, oh, no, don't worry, we're not going to do it. And then 2 hours later, they did it. Well, they were least expecting it, right? Which I'm sure even when they do that, the enemies or the intelligence agencies, they expect it. But a high-ranking Iranian commander repeated threats of a new military strike against Israel, but refrained from sharing details, the Tasnim news agency reported on Sunday. The news outlet, widely seen as aligned with Iran's Revolutionary Guard Corps, said that Ali Fadavi told reporters in Tehran on Sunday that the new operation would definitely take place. It is not possible to comment on its details. It's so professional when they're talking about, doing for them, they talk about it like it's their military professional op, but it's all of these things are just basically attacks. If this was just a private group and not government, they would call it terrorism. And of course, some call it that anyways, because it is what it is. And then U.S. sends warships as Iran prepares for new Israel attack on multiple fronts. Dex, so we've got both sides here.
Yeah, so in addition to that, the Iran Supreme National Security Council, SNSC, has authorized the new military strike against Israel. Oh, excuse me. Got a frog. But also in the process of that, the U.S. has deployed additional warships and B-52 bombers to the area.
A day before the Pick the Prez Day. Are you okay, Dex?
Exactly. Oh, yeah, I just got choked up. Exactly. But look, the Ayatollah just said they're going to give a crushing blow. There are rumors, and all this part is unvalidated, that they've been moving missile equipment, those mobile missile equipments around. They've been moving new equipment that hasn't been used before into position to be able to launch that. So yeah, a lot potentially happening.
And of course, they say the additional warships, the B-52 bombers, despite being urged by the U.S. to de-escalate tensions in the Middle East, Iran's Supreme National Security Council has authorized new military strike against Israel. The decision comes days after Ayatollah Ali Khamenei, Iran's supreme leader, warned of a crushing retaliation to Israel's recent air assault on Iran last week, breaking down huge swaths of the IRGC's air defenses. Amid the war of attrition between the two regional enemies, Ismail Koshwari, a member of Iran's parliament and former general of the IRGC, said that the response would be much harsher than the October 1st attack that saw Iran launch nearly 200 ballistic missiles at a target in Israel. What's interesting, you look at the 300 that were launched the first time that they launched all of these things. That one, after that, they said that the next response would be much bigger. They actually sent less over, but less was more because they used more efficient and I believe hypersonics. They used these things that actually got through. Or did something change? Did their defensive systems not expect it? How were they able to get through with less things coming in? Was it because they were different and faster missiles the second time? And if they're saying that this is going to be worse, is it going to be out of sheer numbers? Is it going to be those same faster missiles? Or you also have to look at, we don't actually know what kind of stockpiles Israel has, but I'm assuming they've got a pretty big one. Dex, go ahead.
Well, when we've seen the amount of missiles that are stored in the mountains and in the caves that they have, or the underground military sites that they have, it's massive. And some have suggested, and again, this is some of the rumor mill parts, so take it with a grain of salt. Some have suggested they could be even in a position to launch upwards of 3,000, 4,000 missiles at one time. That would completely overwhelm, in my opinion. I could be wrong. It'd be an interesting test to see how the dome holds up to it. But I just can't imagine a number that large could actually be defended against. And I think that's one of the things that they have been, in their mind, always been planning for, was They can send 300 over, they can send 400 over, and they might get a handful through. That's never been they've seen that, but they've never been successful with getting even 50% through. But now, if they could send 1,000 or more than 1,000 at a time, or in large batches that come quickly in succession, how would the dome be able to react to it? And I think that is going to be the other. And then the other part they've told us and they've said and they've bragged about is it's going to be unconventional. They've said they have unconventional parts to this, and that's the area that we also think about is, is it the non-nuclear EMPs, which they bragged about deploying to both the Hezbollah as well as to Yemen, and would that be another option that would be happening? So.
By the way, thank you. So many great people just made it in. Faith Parent, thank you. Says I made it. WIS Jen, what is going on? Devin Bradley. We've got Sign Digger, the Jake Lee L88, Saved by Grace. Thank you. I have a bronchial cold. Saved by Grace. Praying for you to get better, hopefully fast. And then, hi right back. And then Phoenix Rising, Shirley Millward. We've got Gemcat. Nice to see you. Gunslinger 67, Gem, thanks again for being here. We've got Mason Google account, great. Rick Johnson, Trusted Source, Briar Patch, thank you. Penny Love Dance, Space Monkey, Snoopy Doe. Dome is outdated. Yeah, and I rarely see any kind of, well, obviously there's a lot of top secret details into how the things work, but you rarely hear about them upgrading systems like that. You just hear it's being used. They did move an Iron Dome to Guam, too. Noni Moose, Woodlander, and that's for our defense, not for Israel's. Brian Knight, Tyler Quick, J-Pass, and Linda Oliver. Thank you so much for making it. Again, thank you for the support yesterday. Terrible Truth, Callie, Sweatnam Ministries, Gillian Mason, of course, B. Tisdale, Jared West, Sweatnam Ministries, of course, Bible Talk 777, Cat, LEPD SWAT, Thomas, William Thomas, thank you so much, Carlton Sutton, Marky Sparky, and Charles Goki, and Justin True, Parker Kraft, Stephen McMahon, Domenico Lavara, and Tammy Lee. Thank you, and thank you. Thank you, Scott Dixon, and thank you, Team Alaska. Also, Sweatnam, that just reminded me, I don't know if you're here tonight, but I did get your email with your picture, and at some point we can pop that up. Probably not tonight because I'm not able to grab it, but I did see your email. Very cool picture. And then Drew York, thank you. And then to anybody else, if you're not seeing an email back, again, somebody said that they didn't get our email. Make sure you double check because we most definitely have sent emails back to you. All right. And then Stephen, thank you. And Bill, I appreciate you subscribing. Thank you. And Joe Helland, Stalwart Psychoderm. I think that's how you say it. Joe Helland, Stalwart Psychoderm. Thank you so much for giving us a chance. We've got a lot more to cover, so let's get right back into it. Of course, Iran is now dangerously vulnerable to the consequences of another attack on Israel. So now Iran is signaling that it will deliver a harsh response to Israel's late October strikes, which are revenge for Tehran's retaliatory ballistic missile strike at the start of the month. Ayatollah said that over the weekend that the U.S. and Israel will definitely receive a crushing response to what they do against Iran and the resistance front. One thing, Dex, is when they sent the 200 missiles over, maybe it's because of the coverage or the lack of coverage, but it's like, what? I remember we covered what it was, but what was Israel's response to that? It almost seemed like it was just like one little headline and nobody talked about it. I know they did very specific strikes at targeted areas, but we actually didn't hear Iran say, oh, there was more leaders taken out. We didn't hear Israel say, we took out strategic places. So they're responding to a tiny response compared to the 200 missiles they sent over? it seems
it was a very strategic response from Israel, and that's kind of what they're saying here too, as they're reiterating it. It was one of those things that when we did cover it, they also said, "Hey, we're not talking a lot about this." In other words, they weren't publicizing it to be such a big deal, but they did have a very strategic military strike going after their missile systems, their ability to build more missiles and load them, excuse me, as well as other locations that were specific to the military. So, you know, an Israeli security official speaking on the condition of anonymity discussed the sensitive operations and said that those strikes on the Iranian military targets were very precise, effective, and powerful, and that is probably leaving them, you know, in a lurch where if they're going to do something back to Israel, the retaliation from Israel will be even greater. And that's something they're not going to be prepared for, because of the fact that they've been hurt so bad from this last strike, which really wasn't that big. It was big in the eyes of their effectiveness, but not big in the eyes of everyone else seeing. It's not like they went in with, a couple of days worth of strikes across all these different locations. I think
it wasn't shock and awe.
It wasn't, no, but I think they'll go after the nuclear facilities next. That's my opinion, because I know they want them. They, being Israel, want to take that out. And so if they're given an opportunity, if Iran strikes and does anything significant to Israel, you can almost guarantee that will be next on their list.
Now, as just somebody who doesn't know, if you do strike those, I guess it's not something that would cause a nuclear disaster unless it actually gets to the point where it's nuclear. Like, if you hit all the facilities that make the side components, that wouldn't cause, I mean, aren't those chemicals even bad for, could that cause a disaster where it blows up? Like, say if they blow up all the nuclear facilities, and some of them, aren't some of the chemicals or the things that are the elements used, aren't those dangerous if they're blown up? That was something
certainly.
I wondered as somebody who's not a physicist.
Well, and you also have to take into consideration, does their nuclear power production systems, are they part of the creation of the nuclear material? Well, the answer is yes. So would they target those as well? And that could also cause, a major issue. That could be disastrous for the region or the area, depending on how they go about targeting them.
So seems like everything is set up. Everything is piped right up to be a really spicy situation. Carol White, thank you so much. I appreciate that. Thank you for the support. Thank you for the super sticker. And Carol White, I appreciate you being here a very long time at this point. Sweatin' Ministries says here, hey, nice to see you. And again, got your picture. And then Saren, thanks for making it to every show. Over on X, thank you guys for watching. Thank you over on Rumble. I appreciate all of you that have switched that to be your family. And thank you, everybody over on DLive. Appreciate, of course, Kimbria, Mick. Thank you, Chance, for holding the house down. Appreciate that. And then Aberration, Marfoogle Barton Brewing from Olympia, Washington. Thank you. It's a spicy meatball. All right, and then Animated Adventures, See Her Think, and so many more. And then Russia to launch 2 Iranian satellites on November 5th. Yeah, like Marcia. Only the theme of this year has been timing. This is extremely spooky. Russia is going to launch 2, not of their own satellites, of Iranian satellites on November 5th. Now, how fast these things can get up into orbit, that seems kind of odd. Obviously, I think of EMP weapons. I think of something like that, an EMP on a satellite, something of that order. What are they, what are they actually doing? Again, they're going to say one thing and we really don't know. In fact, we have talked to people, some pretty high-ranking military officials that have said the same thing that many have said. that even with our official launches or even a regular SpaceX launch that says that they're launching, Starlink, you don't 1,000% know that that's all that they're launching. You don't 1,000% know, even if it's not a top secret payload, like sometimes they'll, launch for the NSA or they'll launch for the CIA or they'll launch for, these top secret agencies. And you won't know what's on the payload. But even the regular payloads, they could completely put something on there. Even people that have worked at SpaceX, people that have worked at NASA or the launch pads, they say they're not allowed near some of the things that are getting loaded, right? And of course, Russia will launch 2 Iranian satellites into orbit using a Soyuz launcher on Tuesday, Iran's ambassador to Moscow said on Monday, as the 2 U.S.-sanctioned countries deepen their scientific relationship. In continuation of the development of Iran-Russia scientific and technological cooperation, 2 Iranian satellites, Kausar and Hod-Hod, I thought of Hodar will be Hodar, will launched at 500 kilometers out of orbit of Earth on Tuesday, November 5th, by a launch vehicle, Iranian ambassador of Russian Kazem Jalali said in a post on X. The development of Kausar, a high-resolution imaging satellite, and Hod-Hod, a small communication satellite, is the first substantial effort by Iran's private space sector, they said this month. Russia launched an Iranian research sensing satellite, Pars-1, into space on February using a Soyuz rocket from the Vostochny Cosmodrome. So there's almost no other details on what these things are as far as if there's anything else on these launches in February. If there was anything else on that launch, are they launching something else? That's what I wonder. Dex, go ahead.
Well, I kind of agree with you on the thought about, what else could be on there, because, we talk about the fractional orbital bombardment system, which is basically was developed by the Soviets back in the 60s. And it's a mechanism by which you can get into low Earth orbit and then move around so that trajectory is not defined and you can't determine where the location is coming from. And it very much mimics a space launch. Well, this is a space launch. So this is going to go up into orbit. They're saying 500 kilometers. It could actually go less than that. And it could maneuver itself because it's a space launch and come around the South Pole and come up through the southern hemisphere across South America into an orbit directly above America and have zero detection from NORAD, because NORAD doesn't look to the south. It looks to the north. It looks for the ICBMs that launch with a standard trajectory. That doesn't mean we don't have anything down there, but we have less down there. Like, we don't look to the south as much as we look to the North Pole. And when you have something that launches into space, it always has to be questioned, like, what's going on, especially when it's an adversary, China, Russia, or in this case, Russia using the name of Iran to do something and then writing it off as just, it's a couple of satellites. It's their first satellites. Well, it could be anything, and we don't know.
Yeah, the timing of it is insane. And if you see the graph I've put up here, so this is a normal ICBM. This is a launch site. So just take this is a launch from the United States over to Russia. Well, they've got a radar beam pointing this way. So they're going to see it, they're going to react, and they're going to send one. Just because it's from left to right, so that's how my brain thinks. But say this is from Russia to the United States. The United States has a radar beam facing this way. Well, if the launch site's right here in Russia and it goes down, or China, and it goes down, and then it comes all the way around the planet, and it hits right here in Texas or something, the radar beam is facing this way. And this came from the south. So that's the Fractional Orbital Bombardment System, the FOBS system. It is something we have talked about that China now has the ability, that Russia has the ability, and some have claimed that North Korea now has the ability to do something like this with help. So, I mean, that's a very freaky thing. I'm sure, wouldn't it? I mean, I would assume that the U.S., nobody ever talks about the U.S. being able to do a FOBS, but I'm assuming they could too. And remember that China, which nobody's talking about right now, everybody's talking about Russia, North Korea, Iran. China test drove a vehicle, and I think there's actually a picture from back when that happened, right? Yes, look at this. This was China's thing, right? So China launched something that actually released a second hypersonic object. So it launched a hypersonic thing that went up and around, and then that object actually launched a second hypersonic object. And I think this might even be a newer thing that kind of broke down how they think it happens. No, maybe not. But I wonder, because they said that even physicists and people that study this could not figure out how they physically did it. Because to launch a hypersonic thing, that's one thing. But to launch something that's going beyond hypersonic speeds from an object that's going hypersonic speeds and have it go a different place was absolutely beyond what they could even imagine. Not to mention, this test, the U.S. did not know about until after it hit its target. It went all the way around the planet, launched a second craft or missile, and then boom, it hit its target, which I believe it was in the ocean. So yeah, very, very freaky. Another thing too is it's the day before Pick the Prez, and really there's not much talk about China. So pay attention. Get your tinfoil hats on, I guess, because I think the most unlikely scenario is probably going to be the most likely. And then before we move on, make sure to go check out Jace. As far as if you haven't already, this is a great, easy service. You can do a telehealth appointment with a board-certified doctor from the comfort of your couch, and you can get an emergency kit that it's less about, having first aid and bandages and all of that. This has all of the most commonly prescribed antibiotics. Not to mention, you can add actual medicines that can be prescribed by the doctors through their services, like albuterol, fluconazole. You can get iodine tablets. You can get all sorts of additives. So again, this is a really, really great service. Antibiotics, of course, in one situation will be one of the most important. If it is true what some of our military members and high-ranking military members in the public have said, which we are going to war with China by 2027, China makes almost all, 97% of the active pharmaceutical ingredients that go into the antibiotics, and they make around 90 to 93% of all antibiotics completed in China, which is insane, as we've pointed out as a whole community for years. So if you do want to get this, again, think about this. What if there aren't hospitals? What if there's a cyber attack and the hospitals aren't available? The pharmacies can't fill prescriptions, or they've just straight up been looted after a major event or a major civil unrest. This is the kind of thing you can use for that or any kind of regional disaster. If there's a Katrina, or if there's an event like in North Carolina where you might be stuck, you're not able to go to the hospital. Maybe the road lines have been cut. This is an extremely, extremely handy thing to have. Now, they also have another service, which is called Jace Daily. I highly recommend asking about that and ask about your medication, because if you or somebody that you are a caregiver for has a medication that they have to take every day, then this is a really, really smart option. You can get 12 months of extended supply, and then you rotate that into your current supply. Kind of first in, first out kind of thing. You'll take the prescription you get from them before you take your regular prescription and always rotate it out. So you always have a year of extra medicine. And you'll also have the freshest medicine that way too. Go to marfooglenews.com/Jace. It not only helps us, it also helps you. We are completely independent. We're on our own. So this is a great way to help. Another way to help, though, more than anything, is to share and subscribe. Get this video out to as many people as you know. Bring in your friends and family members. I believe if they watch at least a few of our shows and they start following this stuff, they will get on board. All right. And I'm sure they will start getting ready. And I think that's what most people really need right now. The more of us that are ready for these kind of disasters, the less bad off we are. Honestly, think about all the people that aren't going to be ready during the next bad disaster. That's going to be a bigger threat than any other adversary. Your neighbor's going to be the bigger threat. The preacher down the street is going to be a bigger threat than that, because desperate people are scary. And Dex, Putin ally, issues World War III warning to NATO. Let's go over that.
Well, this is, again, a sort of a no-duh situation. Medvedev has come out and say, hey, if you let, Ukraine join NATO, it's going to be World War III. Well, it's going to be that before then. But that's sort of an obvious scenario. But the reason it's coming up, and I think that's more important, is that there has been a lot of discussion, at least in the European nations, about wanting to push more for having Ukraine join. Not just saying they're going to do it, not just saying, hey, we'll guarantee you're in the future, but saying, let's get them in now as a means to stopping the conflict. And I don't think that that's really what happens. I think it really just escalates the conflict immediately. So the fact that, and for what it's worth, the U.S. is one of the ones that's sort of sitting back saying, yeah, we're not going to do that. At least our current administration has not been one to push for that at this moment and has actually pushed back against it. But other countries in NATO have been pushing for it. And of course, Zelensky has been saying it, even with his most recent rhetoric, saying either get me into NATO or bring me some nukes, because I used to have them and I gave them up because I was told I would be protected, but now here I am, the only one on, in the conflict. Nobody else is here. It's just me. So it was his argument for this next move. So we'll, again, the threat from Russia, it's sort of an obvious one. We would expect it. We've heard it 1,000 times from them. It's a clear, reiteration of their point that says, if you put them in, we won't, we're not going to back down. We're just going to go to war with NATO.
I thought this was an interesting quote, and in the context, well, it is not clear to what his extent his views reflect current Kremlin thinking. He reiterated his anti-Western sentiment during an interview with Russian propaganda channel RT, which actually, that's like, Dexter, I was just talking about this. It's like the first time I've heard RT quoted or talked about at all in like forever, in which he referred to the former U.S. Secretary of State Henry Kissinger, who perished in November of last year. So it's crazy how fast time is flying. We covered, obviously, that Henry Kissinger passing. But his quote about Kissinger said, shortly before his death, already at a very mature age, he, Kissinger, as if with some regret, suggested that now we have no choice but to accept Ukraine into NATO. Why there's no choice, I don't understand that. Maybe he knew something that we don't. Obviously, they've made comments about the resources that are in Ukraine. Graham made a comment basically saying there's $12 trillion worth of resources there, and we can't let Russia get that money, which is a crazy amount. When you look at the actual GDP of Russia, that would be a big thing. And that would be in the new world, right? Maybe that wasn't worth as much before. But now that we're switching from oil to lithium and renewable resources, maybe all of a sudden a place that wasn't worth that much before is now worth $12 trillion. Dex, it's kind of crazy to think about. They are saying that they've come out with some crazy stats that they're going to be able to be majority renewable resources by, I heard 2025, which is just nuts. But how fast they say that even if it took a few years or by 2030, how fast that they are saying that they want to transition everybody from this. We've covered this since 2016, actually, 2017, early 2017, late 2017, how they said by 2025, a lot of states and things would bring all of this in. And that very soon here, I don't think you'll be able to get a gas car without some sort of permit or without, having to drive special roads. They might separate the roads that you drive with gas, or you'll have to pay certain fees or crazy fees to drive your normal car, which you would think that would take much longer, because how are you going to tell somebody their primary thing of transportation isn't drivable especially since there's going to be, people with regular jobs in the middle class and in the people underneath that have to get to work. Well, that's why I think that there's going to be such a drastic change that is even, think about what's going to happen to work and all of these things with robots and AI in just a few short years. I think they're looking like 5 steps ahead, and that's very scary. And then North Korea issues an ominous nuclear war warning. Now, as it's timing more than anything, as you guys know, we've covered probably 100 of these since I've been covering this stuff. And many people don't take North Korea seriously, but I take them more serious now because of their ties and their treaties with China, Iran, Russia, Venezuela, all of these other countries, because now they are possibly going to be the trigger for a bigger weapon. They very well could be used by any of those other countries to start something off. And most people would say, well, if they do that, they'll be wiped out. But then I think about how much Kim Jong-un or his family, or Kim Jong-un might actually be perished, in my opinion. But I think about how maybe they don't care about the people there. There's not much evidence that they do. They say that most people are starving there, that it's broken down. Pretty much all of their money has to come through black market, funds. Maybe Kim Jong-un or his family were offered a ghost city in China or something that they'll be able to rule. Or maybe Kim Jong-un was offered the East Coast or something in the event that China and everybody else rules the world. You never know. But again, maybe they would be willing to sacrifice North Korea if something happened. I don't know. You always get this idea that North Korea and South Korea both care about the people and that they want to reunify because that's their blood and whatever else. But how they run the country in North Korea, you wouldn't really think so. But who knows? Maybe there's been a replacement for a while. Maybe it's all an op to change our world drastically overnight. You never really know. But yeah, they have a white paper disclosing the criminal colors and miserable plight of Yoon. They're directly throwing shade at South Korea's president. And it said, published the previous day by a never-before-mentioned research organization as the Institute of Enemy State Studies. Yoon's disastrous policy has exposed the Republic of Korea to the danger of a nuclear war. They were quoted as saying, and it says, Yoon, who belongs to the conservative People Power Party, is also known to be a hawk on North Korea, as evidenced by the escalating hostility on the Korean Peninsula. Examples include Yoon's 22 remarks that the South Korea make overwhelmingly superior war preparations to achieve peace, and warning that a nuclear attack would lead to the end of Kim Jong-un regime. The North Korean Institute also criticized Yoon for approving the suspension in June of the 2018 military agreement that had been reached during a short period of warming ties between the Koreas. The pact had both sides agreeing to reduce border tensions, establish a no-fly zone along the demilitarized zone, and cease live-fire drills. North Korea successfully launched its first spy satellite into orbit in November 2023. The South partially suspended the agreement by resuming surveillance flights. In response, Pyongyang declared that it was no longer bound by the document and discarded its confidence-building measures. Now they've torn down their statues of reunification. They've cut off all of the railroads and roads. Now they're digging trenches behind where they blew up any kind of physical ties, roads or railroads into South Korea. So I think that my guess for now years is right, that North Korea may start this whole thing off. Meanwhile, nobody's looking at China. Everybody's looking at Russia, China, and Iran. When I think that there is kind of a hierarchy, and I think China's at the top of it, but China's actually part of this other group, and Xi Jinping is probably in this closed circle of friends, these people that are truly running things. And it's not just Xi. Xi's not the top guy. I think it's these groups, these very, very, very rich people that believe that they are saving humanity. But again, that's just my crazy theory. What's yours? Let me know in the comments down below, but be polite. Remember, as a community, we all want to stick around. And then let's see here. Thank you, my annuity store, Inc. I appreciate that. Rumble the Clown says Somali leaders here in Minneapolis area putting out a call to vote red on Facebook page, Rocks and Cows. I'll have to check it out. There's a video, Amish in Minnesota, Ohio, Ohio, and Pennsylvania. And then anyone remember, I think it was called Jade 15. The helm, yes, drills that took place in 2015. I'm not certain in the areas. I forget. That wasn't Texas, was it? I do remember, obviously it was drills, and the military, U.S. military, were asked to essentially pretend like they're taking weapons away from U.S. Americans. Well, the actors that participated in it, because they always hire these actors to be the citizens, they were scripted to say things like, "You can't do this. I'm an American citizen." Yeah. Of course, that was when a lot of things popped up, the litmus tests, all sorts of things, and that was before CV. So lots of weird events over the past 10 years. Dex, that Helm 15, isn't it crazy? That's been almost 10 years ago.
Yeah. You know, we've had a lot of these different major milestones that we're going to look back upon. Like we look back at the event in 2001 and you say, you remember what it was like before then? And you look back at, say, CV, and you can say, you remember what it was like before then? You know, the things that were different and the things that have changed. And I have a sneaking suspicion that tomorrow is one of those days where we're going to, a year from now, look back and say, or even 2 years from now or 3 years from now, and say, gosh, remember what it was like before the 5th of this year in the month of November? Today's the last day, so enjoy it. I don't think the world's coming to an end tomorrow, but I think it's a major shift. I think we're going to, you know, just like you talk about what happened in the 15 event, you know, all of these different things happen, and it just shifts the mindset of the public. But it's not just that. There's shift in power, control, loss of freedoms, all sorts of things that are going to happen. They're going to, you're going to be able to see it like a year or two from now. It'll be clear as day.
Well, I called Dex yesterday. It was Sunday. I went and visited a friend. And if any of you Seattleites or Washingtonians are here, there's an area called Lake City. Now I'm working on a project where I'm going to show just how bad it is here. Now there was a documentary called Seattle is Dying. Seattle's dead. There's an area called Lake City, and it is up north, 145th and Lake City Way. You know, this is an area that was always bustling. It wasn't ever like a really nice neighborhood, but it was never bad. From 125th to 145th, I could not believe the shape it's in. I was able to ask a few people, including people that worked at the local store, 2 that worked at the Fred Meyer there. And I said, what the hell happened? So first of all, the big Walgreens on 145th, and this is just an example, I'm sure you've got places like this in your cities. There was a full living room. There was a futon, a coffee table. I mean, it looked like the inside of a thrift store on the outside, under, if you've ever been to a Walgreens, underneath the pillars. They had TV out. They had coffee table. They had a whole living room set. He even had like a canvas out on the side on a thing. He was painting. He's hanging out in his living room. This was in front of what was a Walgreens. The entire side was graffitied. Across the street, graffiti. All the businesses are boarded up. I think the only thing that survived that whole 4 corners was a Taco Bell, and that's probably going to go soon. All the way down the strip, there's all these businesses that are not only for lease, but boarded up. There's barbed wire fences around where the bank is still there, but it's not open. It's boarded up, and they have barbed wire fences on a place that used to be a real estate place, and it says for lease, and it's literally got barbed wire fence. Anybody that drives by that and say for an abandoned property, you need barbed wire fencing, and they're like, yeah, I want to lease that. That's just nuts. Everybody said, You know what happened is it all started, and this is, again, I was there in 2018 and 2019 when one of my good friends lived up there. A different friend lived right next to it. And I was blown away. Everyone said it happened during CV, that when 2019 hit, 2021, after the riots and after all of that, it never came back. After they legalized being able to poke yourself in public, and after they brought in certain places that would exchange things that you poke yourself with, after the Fenny came in, and the Fenny came in like a train, like it completely changed the scene. Now there's an actual homeless encampment where the other Bartels was. Bartels is now closed down, a major business. There's not one place that's basically paying taxes in that block. And it makes you wonder, with all of these places all around my city that are now shut down and have been shut down for years, where is the state getting its tax revenue? Where is the money coming from to keep the city going? And how long will it last? I'm telling you, and this was an area that's close to Seattle, the rent is exorbitant. They said that it has gotten so bad, they have escorts that bring them out after work. Every employee in certain places have to be walked out to their car. And it's just, it's a free-for-all. The area is so absolutely horrid. And it's only been in the last 3 years. So if you look at an area like that has changed so drastically, which is now just basically all boarded up, think about what they could do with, just 10 years. Not to mention there's videos coming out right now, places like Detroit, right? A guy did a video driving around the city, and where all of these suburban neighborhoods used to be, you could take pictures from 10 years ago, even 5 years ago. There were all these houses, all these beautiful suburban areas, beautiful area actually, lower end and middle class homes now are just grass lots because it's gotten past the point where it's dilapidated, boarded up houses. They've actually torn down the houses. Now there's just nothing there, and there's not going to be anything there. All of the businesses have closed down. I want to make the call to you guys. If you see something that you, in your cities, especially some of the cities that are really bad right now, if on your way to work, you see something horrid every day, if you see encampments, if you see stuff that is just crazy in your city that has happened just in the last couple of years, and you're seeing your city being destroyed, doesn't matter what city you're in or what country, take video of it, upload it, and then go to marfooglenews.com/playmyvideo. It might end up on kind of a video project here that we're doing. So again, I will be talking about this in the future. I would love to get your submissions. I can only look at my surrounding areas. But you guys, I guarantee some of you walk to work. You're walking to work in a downtown area in one of these cities, and you say, wow, all these places used to be businesses. This used to be a mall. That used to be a strip mall. Now it's an encampment. You are seeing it all around the country. And I think somebody who really puts all of that together and really does show, it's not just a couple cities here and there. It is everywhere. That will really open people's eyes. So again, go to marfooglenews.com/playmyvideos. Somebody says, meth is destroying our communities. Yes, it is either that or the Fenny. And I know certain areas, I know Hawaii, Kati Paina from Hawaii. My sister was there for years. Obviously, Dog the Bounty Hunter talks about it on his show all the time. He used to bounty hunt in Hawaii. And he talks about how some of the culture there was destroyed by that coming in. The new thing is the Fenny. But again, all of that destroys areas. How's Rodeo Drive? Yeah. Oh, no, it's crazy. Devastation. And you'll see the chat. I mean, everybody's saying that mostly the same thing. It's just incredible. Somebody said, was that Third World Tulsa? Yeah. Take videos of it. Take pictures of it. If you see something crazy, again, I think it's going to be shocking how many of you are able to get these pictures and these videos. Like, hey, you might see a convoy or something like that, or you might see an asteroid every once in a while, somebody like winning the lotto. I think that all of you are seeing this. And I think it's going to be very easy for you guys to do this project. So do it. It might just help. And I think that It might wake up some people that may not already be awake, like all of you guys. Dex, thank you for your service tonight. I appreciate you.
Much love. Great job, brother.
Thank you, Rumble the Clown. Carol White, thank you for being the top supporter tonight. Thank you, Callie. I appreciate the super stickers. Thank you, Sweating Ministries. It is now time for the shoutro. It's not an outro. It's not a shout out. It's a shoutro.
Make it quick in a painless. You rich and you famous. On every pants on the ride in a playlist. I like a clip. Maybe you a brainless. Maybe you on a playlist. Doesn't matter, we won't make it quick in a painless. You rich and you famous. On every pants on the ride in a playlist.
Once again, thank you for all of you that have made it to the show tonight. Thank you so much to everyone that makes it every night. Thank you for your mods. Make sure to drop by marfooglenews.com/friends. Again, you can find every single person there. Again, thank you. Big shout out. Thank you for 2024 PayPal donators. Thank you, Dean G, Deborah L, Paula M, Tiffany P, Michelle O, Joanna H, Amber R, Jeffrey A, Karen D, and Alita. Thank you guys. Thank you for supporting more so than anything. Appreciate everybody that's supporting our independent creators, not only myself, but my peers. Thank you. Let's bring it back.
Maybe you a brainless. Maybe you on a playlist. Doesn't matter, we won't make it quick in a painless.